we're going to go in, going to review prompt, and then Ryan is going to review EvoTivo's backup. So NV QuickSight and prompt are some awesome open source contributions from David and Kelly. And so we featured NV QuickSight in DNN Digest, and we were, kind of amazed at the people that weren't aware of it, and also prompt. So we figured, why not have a webinar and share the goodness here? So we definitely hope you find it helpful. And then at the end, we'll have a Q&A session. So just some housekeeping here. You are automatically muted. You don't have to worry about finding the mute button or any background noise. And as we go through the webinar, feel free to ask questions here in the GoToWebinar software. You can also ask questions on Twitter by mentioning @DNN. Also, I'd like for you to locate the raise your hand or raise hand button inside the GoToWebinar software. Some of our presenters will be asking questions at various times during their presentation, and they may ask you to raise your hand. So we will be clearing those out. You won't have to worry about lowering them. And I believe that is all the info here that I need to convey. So as far as our DNN support packages, we wanted to make you aware that we are offering support packages now. Support is obviously important for your DNN website, and if you currently don't have support for your website, we can definitely help. So these newly launched support packages, we've got 3 levels: standard, gold, and platinum. And I've got a screenshot here on the screen, as well as you can see the URL where you can find more information. So just wanted to make you aware if you were not aware of our support packages and if you are in need of support. All right, so first up, we will transfer control here to David Poindexter, and he's going to show us NV QuickSight. So Dave, is David muted?
Okay, can you see my screen now? Appreciate it. I appreciate you inviting me, and it's an honor to be involved with this motley crew here. So excited about showing a little bit more about NV QuickSight. Hopefully everybody can see my slide deck here. I'm going to be talking a little bit about NV QuickSight and how you are able to install a DNN site very quickly and easily without having a lot of previous knowledge on here. So I am affectionately called the Geek EO of Envisionative. We're located in North Carolina here. Also involved in the partners lead for the ecosystem advisory group here, and a few other things. And you've got my contact information there as well. So let's jump right into the information that everybody's so interested in here. I'd like to do a quick poll, and as Clint mentioned earlier, the raise hand icon in your webinar screen there will allow you to raise your hand, but I wonder how many of you have actually ever installed or tried to install a local instance of DNN and got stumped somewhere along the way. It'd be nice to see. Thank you for raising it. Yeah, quite a few of you. So that's really great to see. We've all been there and felt the pain, and you got to love the little face on the baby there. So one of the goals here is we really want to be able to set up a local DNN instance both quickly, efficiently. We also want to follow best practices in doing so, and everyone just may not be completely aware of what those best practices are. And we also want to be able to do that without any real advanced knowledge of the tech behind the scenes or those best practices. So I'd like to ask, how does less than 1 minute sound? In spinning up a local DNN instance? Sounds great to me. So what are some prerequisites to being able to utilize NV QuickSight? One is, of course, you need an operating system. You need a web server, of course, IIS. You need a database server installed, and you need the .NET framework. There are some more specifics to each of those that you can find at www.nvquicksite.com. And you can get all kinds of details there about what you need in order to really get started using it. But it's not too bad. Once you get set up, you're rocking and rolling and easy to go. So what are some common obstacles that we'll run into when we're trying to install a local DNN instance? One is we got to locate the DNN install package. And unless you're familiar with it, you may find that there's a lot of packages out there that you're just not quite familiar with. Do I use the source package, or do I use the web installer, or some of the others, the documentation pack? Which all do I really need in order to get it up and running? Also, you need to know a little bit about Internet Information Services, IIS, and app pool configuration. So if that becomes a little bit daunting to you, this is really the tool for you. You also need to understand about what file and folder permissions are required for DNN to even run well and behave as you expect it to. You need to understand a little bit about database administration and what credentials need to be in place, what permissions need to be on the database. And then finally, if you don't know about little tricks like dnndev.me as a URL that points to your local IP address, then you have to do a little bit of trickery when it comes to utilizing your own local domain name to access DNN once you get it installed. Well, this is where NV QuickSight comes in. So what is NV QuickSight? It's really a Windows desktop application that runs on your local machine and takes care of all of these crazy requirements and best practices for you. We want to overcome all those obstacles in installing DNN manually, so you can do that programmatically through an easy interface. So time for a quick demo here. And by quick, I really mean quick, so we'll do that. By the way, here is the NV QuickSight website that you can get all kinds of information, including detailed installation instructions, as well as how to utilize the various screens within NV QuickSight. So feel free to take a look out there when you get a chance to do so. So I've already got NV QuickSight installed on my local computer here, so I'm going to spin it up. And just to make this more clear, I'm going to give the demo as a backdrop to it there. So at first, we're going to start it up, and we're going to select which install package we want. As you see, there's quite a few to choose from here. On NV QuickSight, we go all the way back to DNN 6.2.0. So you're welcome to choose any of those versions that you want. I'm going to choose the latest and greatest. If I already had DNN installed or had the packages downloaded locally, I can select those right here from the local install package. But in this case, I'm going to download from web. When I click next, it lets me know that I've actually already downloaded it in the past. Do I want to re-download it, or do I want to just utilize the one that's already there? So for the sake of time, I'm going to not replace it. At this point, we're given the next screen where we give a site URL. And a lot of people use .local at the end, so you can do that. You're welcome to use dnndev.me here as well, so you have full control of setting your URL. Whatever name you put in here, it remembers the last one that you did. So right before this, the webinar, I was installing a demo 0. So at this point, I'm going to change it to demo 1. If you'll notice, when I change the site name, it also changes the subfolder where that's going to be installed. So the concept here is to have a base folder. A lot of times when you're installing this locally, you have one folder that you're working out of, and you put up all your instances of DNN. I've got one defined here on my C drive. You have some other options here for utilizing a site-specific app pool, as well as if detecting whether or not the site already exists in Internet Information Services and deletes it if it already does. So in this case, I'm going to install it exactly where it recommends to and click Next. At this point, it recognizes I do not have a folder called that, so it will create it for me. I'll say yes. Now I'm displayed with the database information. This is my local database server, and it already names the database the same as your site name, so it gives you a nice pattern here for following and keeping consistent. I'm going to use Windows authentication for connection, but you can just as easily utilize SQL Server authentication if you want to use a specific username. We're going to click Next, and at this point, I am displayed with a nice little error message. I will go ahead and pause really quickly and show you the GitHub website where you can contribute to this application, and little annoying messages that come up like that due to environmental issues, which I have one here because I recently installed SQL Server 2014, so it complains a little bit about that. You're welcome to contribute on GitHub. This is an open source project, so welcome anyone's input on that might know how to help with those annoying little messages. So I'm going to go right through that. At this point, it's doing a lot behind the scenes. It's extracting the install package. It is setting database, creating the database. It's setting file permissions. It's handling a redirect locally for your URL. And at this point, it is ready to go. All I have to do is click Visit Website, and it will spawn up demo1.local, and that is my local instance of DNN. Of course, the first load here takes just a little bit. And once that comes up, you will be presented the normal wizard of the install for DNN. So here we are. I can enter a password. If I can type it correctly. And we'll leave that as that, and we'll leave that as that. Now, one thing I do want to point out is the database information has already been pre-populated for you. So if you were to switch over to custom, you'll see that it knows my local server name. It already has the database name in there, and we're using integrated security, which most people would want to do in a local environment. But if we would have selected SQL Server authentication earlier, it would have used that as well. And at this point, I can click continue, and we are installing DNN, and we're ready to go. So I'll flip back over at this point to the presentation. I'll mention that you can get NBQuickSight from going to nbquicksite.com and downloading it from there. There are step-by-step instructions for downloading and installing that. And I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have. Feel free to be asking those questions as we go through there. So I think we're going to hold all answering of those questions until the end. And I just wanted to thank everybody for giving me a chance to share this awesome tool with you. I hope it makes your life easier as a DNN administrator.
All right, thanks, David. So it definitely will make your life easier. I know I use it repeatedly to install DNN, just for testing out various things. So, David, we did get a couple questions in on NBQuickSight. Again, we'll answer those at the end so that we can kind of keep tracking along here. And Dennis, if you could go ahead and change presenter to Kelly, we will look at his contribution to the DNN community, DNN prompt.
Alrighty, let me get started here. I think I have unmuted myself. And you can hear me okay. Let's see if you can see my screen okay. This. And one more time. There we go.
About me. That's what we're seeing.
Okay. Thanks, everyone. It's really a pleasure and an honor to be here. I was happy that Clint invited me, and to be among such august company is wonderful as well. Good to be around friends too. Just a little bit about me. If you don't know who I am, I'm not overly active in forums, etc., but I have been around for a long time in the DNN community. And my name is Kelly Ford. That's me. And I have been a DNN developer since version 1. A long time ago. There are some in the community that are still a little bit older than me, but as you can see from my video, I'm getting a lot of gray hair. So I'm one of the oldsters in the community. Of course, since then, I've been designing, developing, and hosting DNN websites. I was honored recently to be a DNN Connect Executive Committee member, just like David Poindexter, and was also extremely honored to receive the 2017 DNN Champion for what we're going to be talking about for prompt from the DNN Connect organization. But I think the most important thing you need to know about me is I'm lazy, but in a good way. As all programmers are lazy, that's how we get all this wonderful stuff that we see on the internet and on our computers. We just simply don't like to do the same thing over and over again, or if something we think is wasting our time, a tool is just taking too long, we'll go ahead and build our own. And that's a great motivation for a programmer, and it's really why I started programming in the first place. And it's one of the motivations behind prompt. So I hope you will like it, and I'm looking forward to showing it to you. But just to get some of the other stuff out of the way, business-wise, I'm the founder and head know-it-all at KnowBetter.com, or Know Better Creative Services, where we do a lot of DNN stuff, but also we do additional websites and cloud hosting and services. I am the founder and webmaster at DNNDev.com, where if you are familiar with our other product, Xmod Pro, you will probably have already been to. We built this as an application developer for DNN. It's been around since 2004 and doing well so far, so I hope you like that. But over the last 6-ish years, we have been doing a lot of cloud consulting and developing mainly on the AWS platform. Okay, now to the important stuff, and that is, of course, prompt. Prompt is the command line for DNN. But what the heck is a command line? Well, if you go over to Wikipedia, you'll see that a command line interface, or CLI, is the definition is a CLI is used whenever a large vocabulary of commands or queries coupled with a wide or arbitrary range of options can be entered more rapidly as text than with a pure GUI or GUI. That is a lot of technical jargon. It makes sense, but it's probably one of the reasons that command lines are a bit intimidating to people, because you see language like that all the time. So I came up with my own definition, and that is, a CLI allows you to get boring stuff done fast. And that's really kind of the attitude behind prompt. So let's talk a little bit more about command lines. Primary goals, or the primary benefit of command lines, is they are fast and efficient. Instead of having to click load multiple pages, find options and where the checkboxes are. I remember going through Microsoft Word many years ago and having to click through this dialog box and that dialog box just to find a particular feature. And even in DNN, the ability to type something that affects multiple users or multiple pages, or even a page that you're not on, being able to type some command in that affects that is much more fast and efficient, and allows you to get your job done and get home and get on with your life. But as I alluded to before, command lines can also be quite intimidating unless you're a system administrator who have already learned the joys and benefits of the command line. Command lines, it's all text, and previously help hasn't been all that good for it, or if it's, there might be a lot of help for it, a lot of help text for it, but it's all very technical jargon, and it's not very helpful for newcomers. And so in that way, it can become very intimidating, and lots of people don't use it, and they don't realize how beneficial a command line can be. It's only recently that front-end developers have started to really use the command line and enjoy the benefits of it. So with prompt, the primary motivation was to bring the awesome of the command line, but yet try to make it as friendly as possible. And to do that, I came up with basically 3 guiding design principles for prompt. First thing, of course, is it should feel and operate like a command line interface. It should have the same efficiency and speed, but since prompt is actually operating within a web page, we should also be able to use HTML to improve the efficiency or improve the user experience without taking away from the speed and the natural efficiency of a command line. The second goal was we really want to reduce that intimidation factor, especially as you're starting out. And we'll go through some of how we do that in the demo here just shortly. And finally, because the goal of a command line is to be fast and efficient, we want to minimize keystrokes. And that means that we'll do things like, instead of a command called create, we'll have a command called new, because it's half the keystrokes. And if you can say 3 keystrokes over the period of a day, that is a lot of keystrokes, especially over a period of a year. So without further ado, let me stop this and let's move over to the demo side of things. Now, hopefully you can see my Windows desktop. Please chime in if you can't. So the first thing about prompt, let me reload just to make sure that my session hasn't timed out. Okay, first thing about prompt is, where do you find it? The easiest, we used to have it on the persona bar, but now it is in the settings tab of the persona bar. So once you're logged in as host, this is a super user / hosts only tool. Once you're logged in, you can go to settings and you'll find prompt here underneath the configuration manager and just above the about link. So click on prompt and it will open up, voila, a command line for you within DNN. The first thing I want to point you to is some of the things that that we do to make it easier. First of all, the first thing you see is, hey, this is prompt. If you need help, type help. So that's what we're going to do. Let's type help. And you'll see that there is a large selection of commands that you can use in order to get stuff done. And it is presented in a nice categorized way. You'll see there are actual links here, like list commands, clear history, etc., that you can click on. Edit on some of the specific commands. So what I first want to do after showing you this, I want to show you a bit more about how you can get help in prompt, because that's really, we want to reduce that intimidation factor if you haven't used command line before. So if you scroll down after typing help, you scroll down to the bottom, you'll see these two see also links. These are designed to help you get started really quickly in prompt and kind of understand where it's coming from. And that'll help you learn and memorize some of these commands a lot more quickly. So if you click on Overview Basic Syntax, you'll see that nothing happened, but actually something did. You'll at the very bottom of the screen, if you can see it, it says Help Syntax. So it's actually generated a command for us to do something. All we have to do is hit Enter, and it will bring us to the basic syntax page. And what I want you to get out of this, you can read through it at your own leisure, but basically this page tells you what is a command line, how you actually type stuff in. So it will tell you that, hey, you have a command here, like get user, and this stuff that starts with a double dash, that is called a flag or an option. And then this stuff over here, this is actually a value that you're passing in as a value for this email flag. If you have something like 2 words, then you're going to need to put it in double quotes. And that's basically all it says. But it's here for you to peruse, again, at your leisure. The most important thing is it generates help learn. So we'll just hit Enter. And now this is a bit more detailed, because the point of this page is to help you understand where we're coming from as the prompt developers, because a command line is most useful if you can memorize the commands, at least the commands, not necessarily all the options for that command. So what this does, first of all, the key takeaways here are that prompt is case insensitive. That means you don't have to worry about capitalization at all. Commands are either 1 word or 2 words. 1 word commands typically affect the operation of prompt itself or the browser, things like reloading a page, etc. And then the 2 word commands are what you're going to use most of the time when you're working with DNN. And 2 word commands are separated by a hyphen and no space between it. So for instance, I don't have any examples there, but for instance, you might have reload, which is a 1 word command. We hit Enter, and it reloads the page. I didn't have to do anything with my mouse at all, and you'll see that the prompt window comes back up. A 2 word command might be something like list users, so it's printed out like that. There are also some other single word commands I'd like to point out. You've already seen some of them. One is help. The other ones that become very helpful are CLS, or clear screen. That just clears everything out. Also, a key component of a command line is that you can up arrow through your commands, your command history. So anything, I haven't put much in here yet, so let's just do like list users. Okay, so now if I up arrow, you'll see list users there. And if I up arrow again, you'll see CLS. Well, if I want to clear that history out, I'll just type in CLH, or for cleared history. And now if I up arrow, nothing is happening. So the other key command here is exit. And so you type in exit, it will do probably what you suspect, and that is it exits out of prompt. Now you're gonna have to use your mouse to get back in and click on prompt again. You'll see that the information, since we haven't actually reloaded the page, everything's still there for you. Okay, one of the other key components behind reducing the intimidation of prompt is to provide not only the detailed help. Actually, I forgot to tell you something. Let me show you the detailed help. So if we do help on a specific command, we type in help and then the name of the command, so like list users. And you can see it gives you quite a bit of help. Hopefully broken up in a manner that's easily digestible and understandable. It tells you all the flags or options that are available. It tells you which one of these is required, if any of them are required. It gives you very detailed information about each of these. For instance, like the email, it says you can use a wildcard, which is an asterisk, to do wildcard types of searches. It also gives you examples like how to search for users by the username. Everything in orange here is an example code. You can search for users by the username using wildcards. It gives you examples of that and some sample output of what you might see on your site when you execute these types of commands. I do want to point out that prompt is still in development. It's not slated for release until DNN 9.2. So what I'm using right now is a nightly build from DNN, and you will find that while there were some things that we had implemented in the original version of prompt, when we contributed to DNN Core, they had to make changes to integrate it deeply into DNN, and so that required some architectural changes, and some things haven't yet been implemented as part of that. So I hope that that will be done by the time that DNN 9.2 is actually released. So I encourage you to work with prompt, play with it, but you will probably find some errors, some bugs, and some things that just don't quite work right. But that's the nature of software in development. Okay, so let's move on to some of the things you might actually do. Oh, one more thing, helpful error messages. If I type in something like add page, well, that's not actually the command that we need. We actually use new page. So if I hit enter, you'll see that it gives you a helpful error message. Command add page is not found. Did you mean new page? Yes, of course, that's what we meant. So you'll see these helpful error messages for you as you work through prompt as well. So just keep all that in mind. Now let's move on quickly, because I have a limited amount of time here. Let's move on to some of the things that's most important to you as a website administrator. And I think probably the most important thing we always deal with when we're dealing with the DNN site is managing users. You know, they always forget their password, so you have to reset it. There may be problems with them. They're like, oh, I wasn't authorized. And you have to click through a lot of pages, and it's hard sometimes to actually find the user you need. So let's talk about managing users, because they do need managing, right? Okay, you saw the first command that I used already, and that's just plain list users. This gives you a list of all, all right, you'll see that I typed in list user instead of list users, and I have a helpful error message that says, hey, did you mean list users? And of course, that's what I meant, so I will type that instead. So we've listed our users in the website. You can see we don't have a lot. This is a test website, but we've got, what, 6, including me, the host, right now. That's not the only thing we can do, though. So we can, let's just see, we have this J Smith here. We can't quite remember the username of the guy that we're looking for. So let's do list users and JSM asterisk for the wildcard to see if we can find it. I did it again, didn't I? Helpful. So JSM asterisk. Okay. And I guess my my S key is broken. Yeah, that's my excuse. I feel like Joe Brinkman all of a sudden. Anyway, list users JSM asterisk. That will then go out and find all of the users whose username starts with JSM and followed by any number of characters after that. In our case, there's only one, so that lists J Smith here. Let's say we want to create a new user. So there are people in your company that you need to create users for. You don't want to go through and click through all the pages for each user and then, you know, just tweak something like a change in their email address or something like that. So all we have to do, again, whenever you want to create an object, you want to use the word new, not add. That's used for a different purpose. So new is the command that we want, and new user, because that's the object that we're working on. So we can do something like a new user. We have to type in a few required fields. First of all, let's just take a look at the help file for this command. And this will tell us all we need to know, and also gives us a nice example of how we might do this, how we might actually execute this command. So well, I'm going to clear the screen so you can see better again. So we'll type in new user and username. That's our flag for the user's name. We'll do Jane Smith will be the username, and her email will be jane@dnndev.me. Her first name is, of course, Jane, and her last name is Smith. So enter that. Tells me the first name is required. As you can see, I only typed in dash dash first instead of dash dash first name. So I'm just going to up arrow and move my cursor over here. Type in name there. Hit enter again. I guess it's already, oh, I've already created Jane Smith. I am sorry. Let's do this then. We will call this Jerry Smith. And Jerry has that email. Jerry's first name is not Jane. It is Jerry. So there we go. So it's created the user for us. And it returns all the information, the most important information about that user. So we can actually see what the user's ID is. You can see the ID is 9. And then when it was created, last activity, etc. And the fact that it's been automatically authorized, because we're an admin, it assumes we want to authorize that user. Now, if you can see my screen off to the right, I'm using Papercut, which is a local SMTP server you can use for debugging and monitoring emails that are sent out. And I have this hooked up to the website. So one thing we didn't do with Jerry is we didn't actually send out a notification to Jerry. So let's make sure that that happens on our next user. We're just going to say Jerry Smith 2, and let's give Jerry Smith 2 the username, and we'll leave it at that. And we'll put in notify, and that will be true. Okay, it's created Jerry Smith 2, and if you see on the right, you'll see that an email has actually been sent out to Jerry Smith 2. If you can't read it, that's okay. You don't really need to know. You just need to know that the email was sent out. So this is actually doing stuff on behind the scenes. All right. Let's see. How am I on time? I think we're okay. A couple of other things. You can, whenever you want to modify an object, you're going to use the command called set. So like set user. So if we screwed up something on Jerry Smith 2, maybe it's actually Jerry Smith 3 that we need for his username. Well, we can do that. We can type in set user dash dash username. What is it? Jerry Smith 3. And now this is where one of the bugs are that is in development. Ordinarily, you would only have to specify this, but currently we have to type in the first name, Jerry, and last name, Smith. And I think that's all we need to do. Change the username, then we'll hit enter. Oh, I guess we did the ID, that's right. So I just up arrowed so I can get my command. That's how useful it is. I don't have to type all that stuff out. So obviously, if we want to set a property on a user, we have to tell prompt what user we want to work on, and for that we need the user's ID, and that's one of the reasons that the new user returns the user's ID as part of the results. So we'll set user for an ID of 10. Notice we didn't have to use a flag here. We can if we want to. We can type in ID dash dash ID, but another way the prompt tries to save you some keystrokes is that it's expecting user ID, and if it's specified as the first option, then you don't have to actually use the flag name. So we'll hit enter here, and we can see it's been changed. The username is Jerry Smith 3. Everything else is still the same. Now, there's a lot of stuff that we'll need to go through today, but let me just kind of go through some of the things that you might want to know about. For instance, let's say Jerry forgets his password. Not surprising. So let's reset the password for Jerry. And we need his ID again. That's all we need. And I want you to look at the, I need to type in notify, true. And then we'll see over in the paper cut to the right that hopefully an email will be sent. Okay, so yes. So the reset email has been sent to Jerry with the link that he needs to do to click on in order to reset his password. So that's very easy. It's a lot better than going and trying to find Jerry through the user interface and then trying to reset the password. This is quick and painless, and especially if you have to do this for a number of them, being able to up arrow and just change like the ID, that is a huge time saver. There are some other things you might want to do, like authorizing a user, and that's simple. We already know that Jerry is authorized. Let's say he's a bad actor, so let's just set user 10, who is Jerry's ID. Let's set approved to false. Oh, that's one of those bugs. So first name, Jerry with 2 R's, and last name, Smith. Okay, now we can see that he's no longer authorized. You'll see here it's empty, so he's not authorized. Whereas before, Jerry was authorized. So you can also delete a user. You can add roles to a user. You can restore a user that has been previously deleted. But if you really want to get rid of a user, use the purge user command. And you can find all this information in the help file. I won't go through every example here. So let's move on to another thing you might need to deal with. That's managing roles, and of course for users. So I'm going to clear the screen again. And first thing we need, let's list our roles. You'll find that list is usually what you want when you don't know what you want. So list roles, this is a list of all the roles that we have in the site at the moment. Let's create a new role, shall we? Type along with me, new-role, and let's give it a name. We'll call it editor. And we need to specify if we want to automatically assign this to every user in the site. Of course, editors, we don't want to, so we're going to say auto assign false. Oh, I spelled it wrong. There we go. So it's created the role for us. Now, if I list roles, you can see that editor is role ID 7 here, then the second one listed. Now that we have a role, we can assign that role to a user. How about Jerry? Let's make Jerry an editor. First of all, I want to authorize Jerry again. So set user 10, approved, true, first name, Jerry, last name, Smith. Okay, he's been approved. So now we can go ahead and assign a role to him. And that is very simple. Now, this is where I was talking about the use of the word add. The add command is typically going to be used when you want to add something to something else or to a list rather than new. So if we want to add a role that's already been created, we use new role to create the role. We use add role to add that role to a user. So we'll do add role. And we need the user's ID, which is 10. And then we need to specify we can actually specify multiple roles here that we want to add to them, but we only want editor right now. So it's roles. And in quotes, we're going to type in editor. Add roles, sorry. Add roles. There we go. So it gives us a list of roles after that. I can't prove to you that Jerry's been added to the role within prompt, but if we manage roles and we go to editor, we can see one user. If we click on that, we'll see that Jerry Smith 2 has been added to the roles. So let's move back to prompt. You can delete roles much the same way you delete users, and that is delete-role. There is no recycle bin for a role, so when you delete a role, it's gone for good. So let's move on. Of course, I'm just breezing over some of these commands and what you might want to do to give you an idea of what you can do as an administrator. One of the other things, of course, you might want to do is manage pages in the website, create pages, look at the information for a page. First thing you want to do, though, of course, is list pages. And we can see, I'm going to clear screen again, list pages. And we can see these are not all the pages in the website. What's going on here? Well, the list pages command only lists the top level or the root level pages. In order to list the pages within a page that are child pages of a particular page, we need to actually use that ID as the parent ID. So for instance, if we do list pages of, I think, let me duck out here. So new page 2 has 1. Page 3 has a few pages. So let's work with page 3, shall we? Let me go back to prompt. And page 3 is ID 37. You see the tab ID. So this page's parent ID 37. And now that gives us a list of the pages that are underneath page 3. So this is kind of how you manage and work through the hierarchical list of pages. I'm hopeful that in the future we'll be able to work on something a little bit different to give you more pages throughout the entire site so you can search more pages. This is how it works at the moment. You can also do searching for pages just as you can do with users. You can search on the name, you can search on the title, you can even search on the path, which is great if you know it's within underneath a certain parent page, although you don't know the page's ID. So you can do stuff like that to find your pages. There's a lot of examples in the help file that you can work with. Let's get a specific page and see what kind of information we have for that. So we're working with page ID 37. So we'll do get page 37. This is page 3. And this is the information that is returned. So very quickly at a glance, we can see that because the skin is empty, it's using the default skin, whether or not it's included in the menu. So if you're having trouble finding a page, you can find it this way, doing your searches, and then you can get information to say, oh yeah, well, it's been deleted, or no, it's not included in the menu. And then you can make those changes using the set command, set-page, much like you worked with the user and roles. Okay, what next? Try to move forward very quickly. There are some other things like managing modules, works the same way. So you can do list modules to see what you've got on your site. This one actually shows you everything on your site. You'll notice down here at the bottom it says page 1 of 4. Just press any key to load the next page or Control X to end. So I'm just going to hit the space bar. That's page 2, page 3, and page 4. One thing I realize now that I haven't drawn your attention to is these links that show up in some of these. You can see if I hover over it, it tells me what the command it's going to generate. So if I click on member directory of the ID 367, down at the bottom, it's going to generate the command get module 367, and I can just hit enter. And this is one of the bugs as well. I have to specify the page ID that hopefully will be fixed. But I can find that page ID here. It's 26. So at least prompt has given me all the information that I need in order to work with this command. So there we go. There's the information we find on the module. You can move modules to different pages. You can change some of the properties of modules, like the title. Of course, you can search for modules. Prompt right now also allows you to manage tasks. So I can quickly list the tasks that we have available. And you can see these are the tasks that we have. Some of them are enabled, some of them are not. It's very easy to disable a task that you don't want running anymore. You just say set task. And this is going to be enabled flag. And we need the task ID. So let's say messaging dispatch. We want to disable that for the moment. So we'll say set task 11. And we want to set enabled equals false. All right, that's happened. Let's list tasks again. And you can see that messaging dispatch is no longer enabled. Some other things you can work on are you can work on the sites, the portals that you have within your DNN installation. You can get information on that. You can do stuff like clear the site's cache. You could restart the application, and you can also get information about the host. So let me just do that very quickly. And you can see there's information about the host. It gives you important information about like the theme, the default theme that you're using, and the container theme and the edit theme, etc., and the number of portals you have. So I know that I'm grossly over time. Let me hand it back or switch very quickly back to page on my stuff. Start my presentation again. There we go. Done with the demo. I will skip through some of the platform benefits. I think you can probably figure out some of the benefits that it has for DNN. In the future, we're looking at rolling out features faster. We'll be able to script our sites through PowerShell, for instance. This will lead to greater growth in the ecosystem because it's easily extensible. Module developers can do this. IT departments can build their own custom commands. And then, of course, we could have something like an NPM for extensions, like DNN NPM, and we can install extensions through this. So those are some of the ideas for the future. They're not in there right now, but those are coming. I know that Peter Donker and some others are working on a PowerShell extension right now that interacts with prompt. Finally, how do you get involved? How do you find out what's going on? I have these, they're both in the DNN core now as part of the nightly build. So these are the links that you can go to get to them. Basically the DNN Admin Experience Library and the DNN Admin Experience extensions. And I'm happy to give you those links at a later date if you didn't get them this time. Of course, if you have questions, you can let me know. I'm at DNNDev on Twitter. You can email me, k4@dnndev.com. And I do want to give a quick shout out to the original prompt contributors, Peter Donker, David Poindexter, and of course, Clint Patterson. So that is it. I apologize for going over time. I will hand it back to, let me change it over to Ryan.
Yeah, thanks, Kelly. Really, really awesome demo. And you know, we've got some more questions coming in. And again, we're going to get to those. You know, very, very powerful tool. I mean, so, you know, we could definitely install and set up a site here with NV QuickSight and Prompt within minutes and get, you know, a lot of things configured. So it's really exciting. So, Dennis, if you could give Ryan control, that would be good. Or Kelly, you may have already given it to him now. And Ryan, feel free to take your time. If we need to go over by a couple minutes, that will be fine. If people need to drop off, you know, then they do what they have to do and can catch it on the replay. But we do have about 10 more minutes scheduled. And like I said, you know, use as much time as you would like. So now Ryan's going to show us.
All right. All right. Well, thank you very much. We'll, you know, as the other presenters have done, we'll jump right into it and right into those details. The purpose for evaTiva Backup for us is peace of mind, is security and concern over having full backups of our DNN instances in a set it and forget it type of schedule, where we can know that all of our DNN instances that we work with are being backed up and protected in that way. So here at More Creative Company, as a web development company and primarily as DNN integrators, we work with a lot of different DNN instances that might be on multiple different hosting locations. They might be DNN instances that we inherited from other people and from our clients. And so one of the primary things that I'll start off by talking about with evaTiva is that it works across multiple different DNN versions, multiple different DNN ages with the exact same version of evaTiva Backup installed. I'll do a run through of the screens and the primary settings for evaTiva Backup on our very own Southern Fried DNN website. But just to kick that off and show you, here we have a few screenshots of evaTiva running in DNN version 4, DNN 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. The functions are all exactly the same. You can, again, use the exact same version of evaTiva install to then have it across all of those different locations. So when you need to grab a backup, you don't have to think first, what version of DNN was this on? What version of evaTiva was I running? You can always grab the newest version of evaTiva and do a restore to get a backup running again from your DNN instances without even knowing what version of DNN or evaTiva you were running. So jumping into those settings and the way that this works, when you load up evaTiva, the first thing you need to do is go to the configuration screen. The configuration screen lets you run through a few of the main things for setup. These items are the database settings for backup, the file settings for backup, a few general settings, off-site backup settings for you to control where you would like for your backup to additionally be sent to, and then scheduling settings for having that scheduled process for doing those backups. And we're going to jump into these just a few details in each, a few screens at a time. To begin with, I want to talk a little bit about the licensing model for evaTiva Backup. It is one that has kind of a mixed model for licensing in that you are able to purchase an evaTiva instance for an individual DNN instance, or for 2 instances, or for 4 instances. So there are price breaks. Again, evaTiva Backup is found on the DNN store and at the module vendor's website, evaTiva.com. But those licenses also have an enterprise version. As a DNN integrator, where I have 60+ DNN instances where we're putting evaTiva onto, that enterprise edition version is the one that we use. in that you have a little bit of a higher purchase cost, but then you have a subscription for a year, and you're able to use that same evativa license for the course of the year for as many different DNN instances as you need to install it on. So they have a very flexible model that can work for you if you're just administrating one DNN instance or you have scores of DNN instances. So jumping back over into the settings of evativa Backup, I want to stop off on each of the screens and just describe a few bits of the settings. Now, primary function of evativa Backup is to create a zip of your database and the content and data of your database so it can be restored, and to create a zip of the folder file structure of your DNN instance. Again, if you have direct remote desktop access, you have FTP access, you have direct SQL access, you can do all of these things yourself. You can do them manually, and that's not a difficult thing to do. But when you are administrating lots of different DNN instances, you don't always have full access or full control. And evativa is one of those equalizers that lets you have that kind of full control and access without having remote desktop, for example. So here we're taking a look at one of the settings screens, which is for the database. And again, I'm going to jump back and forth a little bit between screenshots and live site. So here I'll jump back over to our DNN instance for Southern Fried and taking a look at those database settings. To begin with, you are able to control a little bit about what happens when that database backup is going to occur, whether it's going to produce a native SQL backup file or if it's going to do a scripted backup file. You can also do both, but depending on your hosting environment and the permissions that your SQL user has in your web config, you may be able to run and generate native backups, or you may not. You're always able to create a scripted backup. And when you do that scripted backup, that is the full database restore as a script. So that's not only creating tables and store procedures and everything, but it's also the data for those as well. A few other features, you can go ahead and have it do a few things to begin with before starting that backup process, such as truncating the DNN event log, shrinking the database. So these are some performance things that help you along the run with your DNN instance, but also help make that backup file as small as it can be, because the event log, for instance, can be fairly large. A few other settings here. When you run through that backup, you can control when it's creating that zip file, whether you want it to delete that backup file after it's finished creating it. Normally we have that on because we're trying to save space on our DNN instances. If you really don't have space as a problem, then you can always leave that backup after it's already been zipped or created. Specific settings, by default, you can come to this screen, type in the name of your backup, and then press save. You really don't need to touch any other settings because out of the box, it's ready to go. But you can come in here and you can make exceptions or exclusions to specific tables if you want to not include those tables. So here's a list of all of the tables in the database, and you can certainly come into them and remove them from being backed up if you wanted to. There's also a kind of a quick checkbox that allows you to choose only DNN tables and no custom tables that might be in that instance. And again, if you're creating a scheduled process in the schedule section, you can create multiple different backups. If you want to have one that is the full DNN instance that runs once a week, but you want to have one of just some specific user data or some specific custom table data, and you want to run that nightly, then you can obviously have multiple different schedules, each with different settings in place. Kind of towards the bottom of the settings, you're able to change settings on how that backup is created. There are certain times when one method is going to work better than another, but that's pretty much it. Straightforward database settings for you to create a backup of your database. You come to the bottom, you press update. If you want to go ahead and create a schedule that is specific to just running a database backup, then you can click on the button at the bottom to add a new schedule or create a new schedule. The second setting in configurations is for files and controlling how the files are going to be backed up in this zip file that's going to be created. You name that backup file, and you then have several options at the top which allow you to include or exclude certain common folders that you may want to avoid or ignore. So for instance, you can decide whether you want to include a web config in this backup or not. If you include everything and you just use default settings, then the zip file for the files, along with the zip file for the database, are a complete pair that you can stand up a DNN instance from those zip files. So if you do make any exclusions, just realize that then you don't have a complete copy of your DNN instance that you can stand up again. You then have one for archive or backup recovery purposes. That may be focusing on specific folders or specific files. We have the opposite sometimes, where we will exclude certain folders. Maybe a client's location underneath of the portals folder has one portal with 1.5 gigs of content. That 1.5 gigs of content is important, but not for our backups, certainly not if we're doing them weekly. So we might exclude specific folders. And you'll find that those are some of the settings here towards the bottom. You can exclude temporary folders, you can exclude cache files and folders, you can exclude the search index folder, but then you can also specifically put in any folders or any files that you want to have excluded by manually typing those in. Once you're done with that, you click Update, and again, you're ready to go with your settings for saving your files, and you can also create an individual schedule that's going to run to back up those files. Those things combine together because you can't have certainly one schedule that's going to do both, but we'll finish with that in just a few moments. One of the next sections of configuration that's important to know for evativa is that when you run the backup process, it creates 2 zip files on your local DNN instance. Those files are then capable of being sent to off-site locations. You know, just a point of mention on that, with the hosting companies and people we prefer to work with, we rely on those companies to have their own backups, and those have, you know, certainly been valuable for us in different circumstances. But to me, a point of responsibility is also having external third-party backups available. You might never need them, but the day that you do need them, you're going to be thrilled to know that you have a full backup copy of your DNN instances just running on a weekly process that is able to go to external SFTP locations, go to Amazon S3 locations, Windows, Azure, Rackspace, and Dropbox are other options available there. And just to step through those for just a moment, you put in settings that you would configure for any FTP application for you to connect. So this is a way that after the zip process has occurred, evativa can then send those 2 zip files over to this SFTP location. Similarly, for Amazon, then you have the ability to put in information, bucket name, your username or password keys for Amazon to get connected. And then, of course, similar with anything else like Azure and Dropbox, for you to post those locations, again, to a third-party external location. So then let's talk just a little bit about those scheduler settings. We've talked about them briefly, and this might be a place for me to jump back to screen share, or to the screenshots. But the scheduler process is one where you can certainly run it as often as you need to. We have certain instances of DNN where we'll have multiple different backups that are running to get us specific things so that those zip files can be used by those companies for other purposes other than backup. But here for the Southern Fried site, you can see the example that we have a more lenient backup structure. This gets backed up you know, a little less regularly. It's every 2 weeks. But in this process, you can see that it's backing up the database, it's backing up the files, and it is passing those files to an Amazon S3 location. It runs every 2 weeks. The last time it ran was on Monday, and the next time it will run is in December. So that schedule process is up and running. When you look at those details for the schedule, then you can see that you're able to turn on or turn off other settings so that you can include the things you want to have happen. Now, running, after we've set up all of the settings, let's talk about running an evativa backup and show you a little bit of what that looks like, both in screen share and screenshot and in example. So when you are on the home screen, there's a button to allow you to click to perform a backup right there and then. You're also able to click a checkbox to have that backup process run in the background. as a scheduled process instead of running it right there and then for your user on screen, to help make sure that you don't click the button and then click it again and then click it again, which might start up 3 or 4 backup processes. It does keep track of when you ran that backup so that it will not allow you to run it again within a few minutes by accident. So when you know, if I were to click on this screen where it says it ran 1 minute ago, if I were to click perform backup again, it would prompt me that it couldn't, that it had run recently. So you have to click reset to clear that out if you want to run one again 5 minutes after you've already started running one. But as you run the backup process, it will display for you the records and the tasks that it is completing in order on screen. For that, I'll jump over to an example where having run an evaTiva process, you can see that it runs through first by doing database backup and following the rules that you set. So you get a screen filled with scripting of tables and procedures for that database instance. You then will see the notes and information for creating a zip of the folder file structure. So we've completed here at this point, the database backup is completed. We run through the steps for the file backup, and that file backup is now completed as well. It purges the extra files that were unnecessary because I told it that it could, and then it begins that external Amazon S3 upload. At the finish of that, it lets you know that that has succeeded and that it's completed, and gives you the idea that it's completed in about 3 minutes and 20 seconds here with a full backup of this particular DNN instance. Now, there are times when you'll have errors occur. They can happen for a few different reasons. The most often one that we'll run across is a folder or file or multiple folders or files have their permissions out of sync. So the ASP.NET Worker process doesn't have rights to grab that folder and zip it up and include it. So do be aware that when you're running through that process of active items, just scan through it. Much like the DNN install of a module or setup of a DNN instance, it will highlight in red anything that you do need to pay attention to in that process. Just to point out now, after completing a backup and seeing how that works, there are a few other tools that are also built into evaTiva Backup that are useful. Again, in situations where you don't have remote desktop, where you can't get to FTP, but you have full host access as a DNN administrator or host user, there are a couple of tools here that I've used to help understand what's going on in an instance. And that's underneath of the tools section in evaTiva, where you can take a look at an audit of your database tables and of your file system. Again, we could go into the SQL window and we could run our own queries to get us the size of different tables, but it is nice to have a tool that you can click on to do that for you. So here I've clicked on the tools and the folder size analysis for the Southern Fried site, and you can see which folders are taking up the most room in your DNN instance. If you have to go hunting down where all your free space is gone, this can be a way for you to drill down to which portal, which folder is taking up a large amount of room. Similarly with database tables, if you are seeing that your database table or your database size is increasing and you want to have a quick view at what tables have the most records and are taking up the most size, then that table size analysis can be a quick view into it to help you continue investigating. So just to mention the restore process with evaTiva, as a backup, if you've got that schedule running and you have your zip files local, then you can always be on the home screen of evaTiva and you can restore to those local files. At that point, it will walk through a process of restoring based on those zip files, step you through a couple of questions, and when it's finished, it will restart the application pool and display to you your site run from those backups. But you can take this and run to any other hosting location, any other location that has a database already set up, and you can use the restore wizard. So there is a separate package, a separate zip file that can be dropped into a blank IIS website folder. You then drop in your 2 zip files, your database zip and your file zip, and you then run this restore process. When you run that restore process, it will step you through a few different questions, including what database connection and database name and username and password you're going to use. Assuming you're in a new location, you type those in, and then you run through a process of approving the database restore and then the file restore. If you have those files local and you've dropped those zip files into the same folder, then it's going to run that process and very quickly get you restored with that DNN instance in a new location. If you don't have those files local, then you can switch to FTP, you can switch to S3, put in your credentials, and then it will connect to that location and show you all of the files for database and file backup that you have in that location, and you can choose those. So for us, as a complete package, we use the evativa backup module for backup peace of mind. Move my fingers into camera view. Backup peace of mind in that we know we can set these schedules up. We know that they're running and that we don't have to keep coming back to look for them unless we absolutely need them. Number two, we use it to restore versions of DNN back to a previous version if we need to, or if a client has a problem, we're able to quickly get a handle on that and restore at least to a week ago in most cases. But then also for migration and moving, testing, and upgrading. Any situation where you need a copy, full copy of your DNN instance, you're able to take it over to another location, restore to that from that location, and then proceed with anything else you want to do, such as upgrades or major changes to that DNN instance. So kind of in a quick whirlwind, I tried to be quick about it, but that is an overview of the evativa backup module, and I'll pass it back to you, Clint, for questions and items.
All right, thank you, Ryan. Very good here. So let me share my screen. So we are sharing Twitter, so feel free to tweet. Dennis has been live tweeting the webinar here. But what I want to do is go down the questions that were asked. As you could probably see, there were questions that were asked during the webinar. We've been responding to some. Again, we hope you found the webinar helpful. I think it was a lot of great content. So we'll just start at the top of the questions, and I will read the question, and then you guys can respond as appropriate here. So the first question during David's MB QuickSight session was, can you use MB QuickSight with Evoke? So David, I'll let you answer that one.
Yeah, MB QuickSight works well with DNN Platform, Evoke, and also even custom distributions that you might have, as long as it follows the same model that DNN Platform uses for packaging it up.
Gotcha. Good deal. All right, so the next one was, can MB QuickSight install a pre-downloaded Evoke install package, or does it focus exclusively on the platform edition? That's kind of the same answer there. Anything, would you like to add anything else to it, David?
Nope, I believe that answer covers it.
Yep. All right. So it says, will it install SQL or IIS on your machine if you don't have them there already?
The quick answer to that is no, but what I would highly recommend is checking out mbquicksite.com, and there are detailed descriptions there on exactly what's required for MB QuickSight and can help you get through that process. Gotcha.
All right. So in Kelly's section on the MB QuickSight, I'm sorry, on DNN prompt, there was a question asked, is this something that is installed by default in DNN Platform?
It will be. It's not in DNN Platform right now, so if you're looking for it in DNN 9.1, it's not there. It will be part of DNN 9.2 when that is released.
Gotcha. And I think the next question was somewhat similar, just saying, they looked at their 911 sites and they don't see prompt in the settings, so it's an extension to install. Kelly, anything you want to add, or is that pretty much the same?
Well, if you want to play around with it, then just download the nightly build for DNN and you'll find it there. But it won't come out officially until 9.2.
Gotcha. Okay. So yeah, 9.2 is going to be a pretty good release here. So the next question during your section, Kelly, was, is there any plan to provide a command-like interface to the server install, which I think kind of meshes your project and David's project, right?
Well, as far as I can tell, I think based on the next question, it's talking about directory views. So I'm assuming that's files on the server itself. Like if you were using cmd.exe, you might just do a dir or something like that. Right now, prompt doesn't have that ability, but the thing is that it's easy to add your own if you do a little .NET programming, and it'll integrate with prompt very easily. So you can create that, and I suspect that going forward, as more features are added to prompt, that something like that will be added as well.
Gotcha. All right, so the next question during your segment was, does prompt allow for batch processing?
That's a great question, and it's something that I want to add, or I wanted to add when I was developing it myself. Most command lines use something called piping, where you can take the results of one command and send it to the next command. And that's something that I would like to have added to prompt, or try to add myself. So it doesn't do that now. The plans were to add that at some point in time in the future. There's also the capability of scripting with Peter Donker's new project, which is a PowerShell module, which would allow you to do that kind of a scripting once that's built out.
Sounds like that's a call for some open source contributors to get involved. To me.
Call out. Yep.
All right. So we had a question that says, why were some properties in prompt? Why did they look like links, like hyperlinks? Yeah,
that's part of the method for prompt to help alleviate some of the learning curve of any command line. So when you do a list, for instance, or even you get the details on a specific object, if you see a link, typically you can click on it and it will generate a command for you. So if you say you have a list of, you do a list pages and you see a link for a particular parent ID, if you were to click that, it will generate the command for you to show all the pages underneath that parent page. And you'll see that for everything. So if you're doing a list of users, you see a user ID is underlined as a hyperlink. You can click on that and it will generate the command for you to get the details on that user. It never will automatically generate automatically execute the command, because prompt doesn't want to actually accidentally destroy your data when you didn't want to. Not that that's really that possible unless you type in delete or something. But so it's a way to automatically generate a command that takes advantage of the HTML interface that it actually operates in order to make the user experience a little bit easier. You can ignore them if you want to, but as you're learning prompt, I think it's a great way to explore.
Yes, that sounds like it's kind of there to help you, to help users or admins, figure things out and be more efficient.
Right.
All right, so we had a general question. Matter of fact, we had 2 or 3 of them. Says, are you recording this? So yes, if you were on this webinar or just registered, you will get an email with the recording of it, so that you should be good to go there. Another question about prompt was, does prompt call DNN APIs behind the scenes?
Yeah, an overriding another design principle was that it should use DNN's API and not really do anything special, especially when I was building it from outside of DNN. But since it actually is part of DNN Core, it of course uses DNN's API and is part of the DNN API, or will be as of version 9.2. The great thing is that you can also build your own commands that leverage DNN's API. So if you are a module developer, for instance, or anybody that knows how to program against DNN's API, then you can create your own commands either to use locally or perhaps even sell on the marketplace.
Nice. Yeah, so when you think about that with the NPM stuff, I mean, there's a lot of possibilities here in the future. All right, so we had another question about prompt that says, is the prompt CLI executable available outside of the DNN platform for writing automation?
Yeah, one of the beauties of the way that it's written is it's using the web API, which is leveraged heavily by DNN already. So David Poindexter, for instance, has been writing a mobile application that's going to allow you to do some management of your sites using prompt, but from your mobile phone. And he's using the JavaScript web tokens and the web API, or the API presented by prompt in order to do that. So that's very cool. The other option for doing this remotely is the PowerShell module that I alluded to earlier that Peter Donker seems to have grasped and is starting to build out. So there are going to be a lot of ways that you can leverage the prompt API, as it were, from outside of the DNN website itself. I could even see, and I'm sure David has already been thinking about this, of ways to script something like MD QuickSite, or even Evotiva to do an install of a site remotely, or to manage your backups remotely as well.
All right, so correct me if I'm wrong, but what I'm hearing you say is that I could be at my nephew's baseball game, and if I need to recycle an app pool or clear a cache, that there may be a mobile app which David's making that would leverage what you've made, and I could click a button and do it from my phone?
Absolutely. I mean, again, we're lazy, but in a good way, and so that helps you out there.
I think, like Ryan said, there's admins everywhere clapping, right? Okay, so we've got.
Glenn, I promise you, you will not have to type out the command inside of the mobile app.
One tap, yeah.
Sweet. All right, yeah. So,
Clint, that example too was the primary use case. When I first heard about it from David, that was exactly my first question. I could be in the car driving down the road, and I could bring up my app, and I could fire something out of prompt. This is a fantastic thing.
Of course, then you would promptly wreck because you're on your phone and you shouldn't do that.
That's right. Don't do it while you're driving.
Yeah.
All right, so we've got 2 more questions. So Ryan, during your segment, we had a question that says there was recent discussion about security, particularly for government organizations. And they want to know if there's any security considerations around using evoTiva for government.
Certainly should be, and this is just good security practice for you to think about and be concerned. Since this backup pair of files is a complete restore of your location. So there are 2 or 3 things this brings to mind for me. Number 1, you are able to set a username and password to those zip files so that you, if you do receive the zip files through standard practices, you wouldn't be able to open it without a password. But then where you post those files to, you should try and make that an SSL protected transfer, which all those are options when you're doing SFTP, when you're doing Amazon S3, etc. But then 2, the location where the backup files are stored in your DNN instance, if they're not cleared away after they get uploaded, perhaps to an external location, then you can consider things like doing IP address restrictions for that specific folder so that it cannot be accessed if you don't have direct access or remote desktop. But then 2, within the backups themselves, there are some considerations. For instance, when we are doing evoTiva on e-commerce websites, where we know there are a lot of sensitive data inside of those. Or another example might be healthcare-related things where you have HIPAA-related data. We might purposefully choose to isolate certain tables in our backups so that they are not part of our backups. So we have emergency restore, we have the ability to prop up another location, but perhaps we're not taking any of HIPAA-related medical records as part of that data. So being aware of the security is an important thing, and evoTiva comes with a few features that can help you with that.
Sweet. Yeah, all right, so the last question is, so for the DNN backup, does it just back up the database or is it doing the entire website? So database plus file system.
Yeah, it's doing the full thing. It is a flexible backup program so that you are able to then obviously choose to do backups manually or on a scheduled process for one thing or another, but at its core, the intent is the ability to do a complete backup of everything in that DNN instance so that you can take it local, you can take it to another hosting location, you have that complete backup.
Gotcha, awesome. Well, we've had some great questions, and if you guys still have the raise your hand feature, if you found any helpful information in this webinar, feel free to click the raise your hand button. So we've had a pretty attentive audience with some good questions. So yeah, I see the hands going up there. So we definitely appreciate everybody joining in. Ryan, David, Kelly, Dennis behind the scenes, thank you all so much for contributing not only your open source knowledge, but your time here on the webinar. So we will go ahead and wind this one down. Thanks again. You will get an email with your replay tomorrow morning, I believe. And Dennis, I'll let you go ahead and end the webinar. So thanks, everyone.